Librarians are the lore masters and most wise members of a chapter. Gifted with psychic abilities, they are invaluable to the chapters that use them. And of course, like most of the chapter's command, they often field themselves wearing Terminator armor. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and today we are covering the Terminator Librarian. So the Terminator Librarian comes in at, I believe it's 75 points. So for 75 points, you get a pretty standard Terminator character stat line: 5 inches of movement, toughness 5, 5 wounds, a 2+ save, 4+ invulnerable, leadership 6+, and OC 1. Totally standard, though pretty tough for only 75 points, in terms of a character at least. And then in terms of ranged weapons, he can take either a combi bolter or combi weapon. The combi weapon's anti-infantry 4+, devastating wounds, and rapid fire 1 at 24-inch range, 1 attack that hits on 4s at strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. Really not worth taking. And the combi bolter has rapid fire 2, 12 at 24-inch range, ballistic skill 3+, strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. A very solid little burst of anti-infantry fire, especially anti-light infantry. Though his main ranged attack is of course Smite. Smite has an 18-inch range, D6 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 5, AP 1, and damage D3. Very solid. You can overcharge it, it gains hazardous, but it also gains devastating wounds, with D6 attacks that hits on 3s at strength 6 and AP 2, making it far more powerful, though of course having the risk to deal 3 mortal wounds to your character is never good. However, the damage buff is, when it's applicable, will be very good, such as when it transmits 2+1 to wound, or where it will sort of make the difference with the AP if the opponent's stay in cover. In terms of melee weapons, he has his Force Weapon, which is just a psychic weapon with 4 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 6, AP 1, and damage D3. Fairly weak melee as far as a Space Marine character goes. The low AP is not helped by the fact that it has very few attacks. In terms of abilities, he has his Psychic Hood, which gives his unit a 4+ Feel No Pain against psychic attacks. And he also has Veil of Time, which is his psychic ability. While leading a unit, their weapons gain Sustained Hits 1. Now, this, I believe, has changed from the index. I believe it used to only apply to ranged weapons, but now it applies to everything. And this makes him far... Sorry, I'm so sick. Far more general purpose. And Sustained Hits 1 is helpful at both range and in melee, of course. Their anti-infantry range weapons will really appreciate it. And if you're bringing Cyclone missile launchers with normal Terminators, or Deathwing, for example, they would appreciate any 6s they get. And in melee, where they want to be, of course, Sustained Hits is going to be useful, though I would say it's not as powerful for punching up as some of the other abilities are, as we'll cover in a moment. As a last note, never bring the combi weapon, always bring the combi bolter. If you model them with a combi weapon, just run it as a combi bolter. In general, the Terminator Librarian, compared to his compatriots, the Terminator Captain and Terminator Chaplain, trades off their more focused buffs in terms of the +1 to wound and free stratagems for a general buff of Sustained Hits. Now, the mid-strength of Terminator melee weapons does appreciate the Sustained Hits quite a lot, and a unit that really appreciates it is Deathwing Knights, as they already naturally wound most things in the game very efficiently. This allows his Sustained Hits to be at their most useful. However, I'd say detachments specifically, the Captain gets better in, say, Inner Circle Companions, or Inner Circle Task Force, and the Chaplain's buff is more impactful for their mid-strength weapons. But I do think if you just want a take-all-comers buff, it's hard to go wrong with the Librarian. I think he's a fine choice compared to the Chaplain helping them punch up, and while the Librarian doesn't necessarily help them punch up, it helps them punch everything a little bit harder. So that's sort of your want. Do you want them to be better at punching tougher stuff, or better at punching stuff just in general? And then, of course, I think if you're not bringing a Captain, whether your detachment doesn't have any good stratagems to reduce, or if, in general, you have good CP generation and don't need a Captain for whatever reason, I think this guy's a fine alternative, though the Captain is much better, especially with his reroll charges. I'd say being much better than the 4+ Feel No Pain, which also the Chaplain does better, as that Feel No Pain is against all mortal wounds, and this one's only against psychic attacks. Anyways, I think he's a strong unit, but he's not my first choice. Anyways, I've been Spoons Rattling. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.
Phobos librarians are unsurprisingly librarians that wear Phobos armor, specializing in vanguard tactics and often using magic more so to hide themselves and their troops, more so than using them to explode the brains of their enemies. They also have probably the single coolest librarian model ever, in my opinion. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and today we are covering the Phobos librarian of the Space Marines. So, the Phobos Librarian is of course a character unit for the Space Marines. He comes in at 70 points with a fairly standard stat line of movement 6 inches, toughness 4, a 3+ save, 4 wounds, leadership 6+, and OC 1. This is a standard enough profile, and for 70 points it's nothing standout. In terms of ranged weapons, he has his bolt pistol and his smite. His bolt pistol is one attack that hits on 3s at 12-inch range with strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. Fairly whatever, though I guess useful enough when you're in combat. Then he has Smite, of course, which is a psychic attack. That's D6 attacks that hit on 3s at 24-inch range, strength 5, AP 1, and damage D3. Very good at killing Space Marines. And he can overcharge that to make it the focused version, which gives it devastating wounds, but also hazardous, which it then gains strength 6, AP 2, and damage D3. A solid enough upgrade, especially against things where you'll get an extra +1 to wound, like, say, Terminators, or Gravis, or even Guardsmen to an extent, as you'll be winning them on 2s instead of 3s. Then he, of course, has the standard force weapon that the Psychers have, which is a psychic weapon. 4 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 6, AP 1, and damage D3. Nothing standout, though, good at killing medium to light infantry. He, of course, has infiltrators like all the Phobos Marines do. Then his main ability is the Shrouding Magic. While leading a unit, this unit cannot be selected as the target of a ranged attack outside of 12 inches, and they gain the Stealth ability. This is super useful, not only because it means they have Lone Operative, but also if someone does get in range of them, they have -1 to hit, which makes them much, more durability is always a good thing, especially on standard Marine bodies. Then he also has a Psychic Hood. While this model is leading a unit, they have 4+ field updating and psychic attacks, fairly niche but powerful when it comes up, though these guys won't have to deal with too much damage unless they are way out of position, which should be pretty hard to do. So the Phobos Librarian, I'd say, is actually a lot better than the standard Librarian, as while the Librarian gives them a 4+ invulnerable save, this guy just means they flat out can't be shot from most of the board's positions. Whether they're lurking in the backfield or on the flanks of the army in general, they'll always have a good amount of protection. And even if things do get in close, they of course have that last-ditch stealth to rely on. In terms of who to lead, I'd say infiltrators are the most standard if they're sitting in the backfield, as that will deny deep strike, meaning they are practically unkillable unless they can get into your deployment zone. And even if they do, it'll often be quite a depleted unit, which is the kind of unit that these guys are good at taking down. Though if you want to use them for utility, I'd actually recommend eliminators, as eliminators allow them to double move, which means they'll be moving at 12 inches a turn, and if they can get assault, like in Gladius Strike Force, they can of course move even faster than that. While these are rather pricey units at 170 points about for both of them, they're super valuable for the objective game, and in that way I think they do have a solid niche in the army. While not every army is going to take them, in the right hands, these guys can be a real thorn in the side of the enemy, taking out units that are below their weight class, but still with no retaliation available. It can be rather frustrating. Overall, I'd say that this guy is a very solid choice if you want to have a very secure home field objective, or if you just want someone roaming the mid-board that will often be unable to be shot and can really just pick its fights and punch down. I've been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Librarians are psychically charged Space Marines, entrusted with keeping the lore and history of the chapter intact in their librariums. They are also battlefield wizards, and also some of the captain's most trusted advisors, especially to the chapter master in the case of a chief librarian, an extremely rare psychic warrior. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and today we are covering the Librarians of the Space Marines. So, the Librarian is of course a character model for the Space Marines who comes in at 65 points. He has the standard Space Marine character profile of movement 6 inches, toughness 4, 3+ save, 4 wounds, leadership 6+, and OC 1. Which is fairly standard, though not a standout for this cost. He has 2 ranged weapons, Bolt Pistol and Smite. The Bolt Pistol is just 1 attack, hits on 3s at 12-inch range, strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. And then Smite has 2 profiles, focused and unfocused, I suppose. Smite has D6 attacks that hit on 3s at 24-inch range, strength 5, AP 1, and damage D3. Fairly standard anti-marine profile. And then if you focus it, it gains devastating wounds and hazards, making it more general purpose, though of course more threatening to this Marine himself. And then of course it gains an extra strength and AP. Then he has a force weapon, which is 4 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 6, AP 1, and damage D3, which is a fine profile, though was kind of let down by its low AP.
Then, in terms of abilities, he has two, of course. He has his Psychic Hood. When leading a unit, they have a 4+ Feel No Pain against psychic attacks. Fairly niche, but when it comes into play, it will be very impactful, so if Psychers are a huge problem for you, this guy is, of course, a fair enough option. And then Mental Fortress, while this model is leading a unit, models in that unit have a 4+ Invulnerable save. This is a solid enough defense boost, though he can only give it to the Tacticus Armored Marines, which does limit its use a little bit, as the ones he'd want to guard the most already have invulnerable saves, and the ones he can give it to aside from that are often a little too expensive for it to be a huge durability boost. Overall, his shooting is quite solid against Space Marines, and his melee weapon is fine enough against most kinds of light to medium infantry, though will struggle against tougher things. As I mentioned, the Librarian is mainly focused on durability, given his Feel No Pain and invulnerable save ability. However, I don't think he's necessarily exemplary in that route. He doesn't do anything standout, as I mentioned. Things like Blade Guard Veterans already have an invulnerable save, and even something like Inner Circle Companions get a durability buff from having a character attached, which isn't exactly the greatest when it comes to competition. He also lacks a double leader rule, which makes sense given the Librarian's place in the chapter, but it would have been a nice touch, just so he wouldn't be sort of ham-fisted due to his lack of a damage buff. And also the fact that, again, if you bring this guy, you can only bring the one character in the unit. He is decently cheap, but he isn't cheaper than a Lieutenant, who I'd say is significantly better. Comparing him to those main big three, I'd say the Chaplain, Captain, and Lieutenant all offer much more direct damage buffs, as well as having much better stats themselves. While this guy could function at range, again, I think the Lieutenant outclasses him there as well, as his ranged buff is nothing. He just gives him durability, and the things he'd want to give it to, like Hell Blasters, even with a 4+ invulnerable save, aren't really durable, and would get more value from an Apothecary standing a model back up every turn. Which means this guy, again, sort of isn't bad. I wouldn't say he's like outright bad, but he lacks a place in the army. Anyways, I've been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.